Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. What would you do if you thought your husband didn't care enough to even get jealous until a court order landed on your doorstep? How did I go from making jokes about him in front of everyone to seeing my whole life unravel in a single morning? I never thought his revenge would be so calm, cold, and final. My name is Delith Mora, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a medical billing clerk at a busy clinic in suburban Colorado, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect setup. A quiet husband who never questioned me, a comfortable house, and all the freedom I wanted. I was so wrong about everything. The Red Robin on 5th Street was packed that Friday night in March. Our usual group had claimed the big corner booth. Me, my husband Graham, his brother Mike, my parents Elaine and Rob, and Graham's mother Marjorie. It was supposed to be a celebration for Graham's promotion to senior systems analyst, but I was already 3 drinks in and feeling that familiar itch for attention. Graham sat beside me, quietly cutting his burger into precise squares like he always did. Everything about him was so methodical, so predictable. At 36, he still ordered the same meal every time we came here, still said please and thank you to every server, still never raised his voice no matter what I said to him. "You know what's funny?" I announced, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "Graham here has never been jealous. Not once in 12 years of marriage." My mother Elaine laughed, her wine glass already half empty. "Really? Not even when you were dating?" "Never," I continued, warming to my audience. I could flirt with the mailman right in front of him, and he'd probably just ask if I needed help carrying the packages inside. Mike shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but I was just getting started. The alcohol made everything seem funnier, more justified somehow. "Last week, this guy at work, Evan, he's been asking me to lunch every day. Super charming, really good looking. You know what Graham said when I told him?" I paused for dramatic effect. He said, "That's nice, honey. Did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning?" The table erupted in laughter. Well, most of it did. Marjorie's face had gone stone cold, and Mike was staring at his plate. But my dad Rob was chuckling, and Elaine was practically cackling. "Maybe he trusts you," Graham said quietly, still focused on his food. "Trust?" I scoffed. "Or maybe he just doesn't care enough to fight for me. I mean, what kind of man doesn't get at least a little jealous when his wife gets attention from other men?" Graham's fork paused halfway to his mouth. For just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Hurt, maybe? But then it was gone, replaced by that same calm expression he always wore. "Some men show they care in different ways," Marjorie said sharply. "Not everyone needs to make a scene to prove their feelings." "Oh, come on, Marge," I waved her off. "A little passion wouldn't kill him. Sometimes I think I could pack my bags and move in with another man, and Graham would just help me carry my suitcases to the car." The laughter this time was more forced, more uncomfortable. Even Elaine looked a bit uncertain. "Delith," Rob said gently, "maybe that's enough." "It's fine," Graham said, setting down his fork. His voice was perfectly level, perfectly controlled. "She's just having fun." But something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched in his lap. For the first time in years, I wondered if I'd actually gotten to him. "See?" I said, but my voice came out a little less confident. "Nothing bothers him. He's like a robot sometimes." Graham stood up abruptly, reaching for his wallet. "I'm going to head home. Early morning tomorrow." "Graham, sit down," Marjorie said firmly. "You haven't finished your dinner." "I'm not hungry anymore." He placed 2 20s on the table, more than enough to cover his meal. "Delith, get a ride with your parents. I'll see you at home." He walked out without another word, without looking back. The table fell silent, the only sound the clatter of dishes from the kitchen and the buzz of conversation from other diners. "Well," Elaine said finally, "he certainly showed you." But Mike was shaking his head. That wasn't showing anything. That was him breaking. Breaking? I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. Over a few jokes. Come on. Those weren't jokes, Deleith, Marjorie said, standing up and gathering her purse. That was cruelty. And you did it in front of his family, in public, where he couldn't defend himself without looking like the bad guy. You were just humiliating your husband for entertainment, Mike interrupted, and now you're surprised he walked away. They both left, following Graham's path to the parking lot. I sat there with my parents, suddenly feeling very sober despite the alcohol in my system. They're overreacting, I said, but even I didn't believe it anymore. When I got home 2 hours later, the house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Graham was sitting in his recliner, still in his dinner clothes, staring at nothing. You're being dramatic, I said, kicking off my heels. It was just a joke. He looked at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Not anger, that would have been easier to dismiss. It was disappointment, deep and cutting. Was it funny? He asked quietly. What? Making me look like a fool in front of our families. Was it worth the laugh? I wanted to say yes, to defend myself, to make him understand that I needed more than his quiet devotion, but something in his expression stopped me. Graham, I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, he said, standing up. I need some space to think. He walked past me toward the stairs, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt a chill of real fear. Not because he was angry, I could handle angry, but because he was calm, deliberate, like he was making decisions I wasn't part of. You're overreacting, I called after him, but he didn't respond. I heard the guest room door close, followed by the soft click of the lock. Monday morning came with an uncomfortable silence. Graham made his coffee, kissed my forehead like always, and left for work without mentioning Friday night. I told myself this was good. He was getting over it, moving on. But something felt different. He was polite, distant, like I was a house guest he was being cordial to. At work, I found myself gravitating toward Evan Riles more than usual. He was everything Graham wasn't. Spontaneous, flirtatious, always ready with a compliment or a joke. When he suggested we grab lunch at the new Italian place downtown, I said yes without hesitation. Your husband's a lucky man, Evan said over chicken parmesan, his eyes never leaving mine. I hope he knows what he has. Sometimes I wonder if he does, I heard myself saying. The words came out before I could stop them, loaded with more meaning than I'd intended. Evan leaned forward, his hand brushing mine across the table. His loss could be someone else's gain. I should have pulled my hand away, should have changed the subject, made some excuse about needing to get back to work. Instead, I let his fingers intertwine with mine and felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in years. Deleith, he said softly, you deserve someone who appreciates you, who fights for you. Graham doesn't fight for anything, I said bitterly. He just accepts whatever happens and moves on. Maybe it's time you stopped accepting that. When I got home that evening, Graham was making dinner, grilled chicken and vegetables, perfectly seasoned and plated. Our 8-year-old daughter Tessa was at the kitchen table doing homework, her dark hair falling across her face in concentration. How was your day? Graham asked, the same question he'd asked every day for 12 years. Fine, I lied, thinking about Evan's hand on mine, the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious. Busy. Daddy made my favorite, Tessa announced, not looking up from her math worksheet. Want to see my drawing from art class? She held up a crayon masterpiece, our family standing in front of our house, stick figures, holding hands under a yellow sun. But something was wrong with the picture. The figure labeled Mommy was standing apart from the others, not connected to the chain of hands. That's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, but my voice came out strained. Graham glanced at the drawing, then at me. Kids see more than we think they do. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of stolen lunches and text messages. Evan was attentive in ways Graham had never been, or maybe ways I'd never noticed. He remembered my coffee order, complimented my outfits, made me feel alive and desirable. "You're glowing lately," my mother said during one of our weekly phone calls. "What's your secret?" "Just feeling good about myself," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. "Maybe getting out more, having some fun." "Good for you. Graham's always been so serious. A little excitement never hurt anyone." But the excitement came with a price. I found myself lying more, staying late at work for inventory that didn't exist, making excuses to avoid family dinners. Graham never questioned me directly, but I caught him watching me sometimes with that same unreadable expression. One evening in late April, my phone buzzed with a text from Evan. "Missing you, can't wait for tomorrow's lunch." I was smiling at the message when I realized Graham was standing in the doorway, a laundry basket in his hands. "Work?" he asked, nodding at my phone. "Just Sarah from billing," I said quickly, turning the screen face down. "Some question about the schedule." He nodded and continued folding Tessa's clothes, but I saw him glance at the phone again. For a moment, I wondered if he suspected something. Then I pushed the thought away. Graham trusted me completely. He'd said so himself at dinner that night. It was one of the things that made this so easy. The next day, Evan and I drove to a little cafe outside town, somewhere we were less likely to run into anyone we knew. The conversation flowed like wine, easy and intoxicating. "I've been thinking," Evan said, reaching across to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "Maybe it's time you stop settling for less than you deserve." "What do you mean?" "Your husband. He doesn't appreciate you, doesn't fight for you. You said it yourself. He's like a robot. You're vibrant, passionate, alive. You deserve someone who sees that." His words were like oxygen to a fire I didn't know was burning inside me. "It's complicated. There's Tessa to think about, and kids are resilient," he said softly. "They adapt, but they also learn from what they see. Do you want your daughter growing up thinking this is what love looks like? This quiet, passionless existence?" I thought about Graham at breakfast that morning, reading his paper while I got Tessa ready for school, the two of us moving around each other, like polite strangers. When was the last time he'd really looked at me? When was the last time we'd had a conversation that wasn't about schedules or household maintenance? "You're right," I whispered. Evan leaned closer, his hand cupping my face. "You know I'm falling for you, don't you?" When he kissed me, I didn't pull away. That night, Graham was waiting up when I got home from my supposed girls' night out with co-workers. "How was dinner?" he asked from his chair, not looking up from his book. "Good," I said, the lie coming easier now. "We went to that new place on Maple Street." "The one that closed down last month?" My blood went cold. "What?" "The restaurant on Maple. It closed in March. Sarah mentioned it when she called looking for you earlier." I stood frozen in the entryway, my mind racing for an explanation, but Graham just turned a page in his book as calm as ever. "I must have gotten the name wrong," I said finally. "You know how bad I am with street names." He said, still not looking at me. "Must be." But as I headed upstairs, I heard him pick up his phone and dial a number. "Mike, it's me. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? I need to talk to someone." By May, I'd convinced myself that what Graham didn't know couldn't hurt him. Evan and I had fallen into an easy rhythm. Lunch dates, long conversations, stolen kisses in empty conference rooms. He made me feel like the woman I used to be before marriage and motherhood dulled all my edges. "You're different lately," Marjorie observed during Sunday dinner at our house. "Distracted." "Just busy with work," I said, refilling wine glasses around the table. The new billing software has been a nightmare to learn. Graham was carving the roast, his movements precise and methodical as always. Tessa was pushing peas around her plate, building little green walls around her mashed potatoes. "Speaking of work," I said, feeling reckless from the wine. "Evan, that's my co-worker I mentioned. He says I'm the most competent person in the office. Unlike some people, he actually notices when I do good work." The knife in Graham's hand paused for just a moment before continuing its steady rhythm. "That's nice, dear," he said evenly. "Nice?" I laughed. "That's it? Your wife gets praised by a colleague and all you can say is, 'That's nice'?" Evan says most husbands would be proud, maybe even a little territorial, about their wives getting so much attention from other men. Mike cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we could talk about something else." "Why?" "Because it makes everyone uncomfortable that my husband has no passion, no fire." The wine was making me bold, making me cruel. "Do you know what Evan said when I told him Graham never gets jealous? He said maybe Graham just doesn't care enough to fight for what's his." "Delith," my father said quietly, "that's enough." But I was on a roll now, feeding off the discomfort around the table. I mean, what kind of man hears that his wife is spending time with an attractive, successful man who clearly appreciates her and just says, "That's nice"? Tessa looked up from her plate, her dark eyes wide and confused. "Mommy, why are you being mean to Daddy?" The question hit me like a slap, but I pushed down the guilt. "I'm not being mean, sweetheart. I'm just pointing out that some people show they care more than others." "Graham shows he cares every day," Marjorie said sharply. "He works 60-hour weeks to provide for this family. He coaches Tessa's soccer team every Saturday. He hasn't missed a single school event or family dinner in 12 years. Just because he doesn't make a spectacle of his feelings doesn't mean they don't exist." "Actions speak louder than words," I shot back, "and his actions say he doesn't care if other men find his wife attractive." "Maybe," Graham said quietly, setting down the carving knife. "His actions say he trusts his wife to handle attention appropriately." The word appropriately hung in the air like smoke. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or anger. "Trust," I repeated. "Right. Well, maybe trust isn't enough. Maybe sometimes a woman needs to know her husband would fight for her." "And maybe," Mike said, standing up abruptly, "a husband shouldn't have to fight off other men because his wife should make it clear she's not available." "Mike," Graham warned. "No, I'm done being polite about this." Mike threw his napkin on the table. "You want to know why Graham doesn't get jealous, Delith? Because he respects you enough to believe you'd never betray his trust. But the way you're talking, the way you've been acting lately, maybe his trust is misplaced." The silence that followed was deafening. Tessa had tears in her eyes, and Marjorie was staring at me with undisguised disgust. "I think," Graham said carefully, "we should change the subject." "No," I said, my voice rising. "Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how I'm supposed to feel appreciated when my husband treats me like a piece of furniture, when he shows more emotion about his morning coffee than he does about his wife." "You want emotion?" Graham asked, and for the first time there was something sharp in his voice. "Fine. You want to know what I feel when you spend your days telling me how wonderful another man is. When you come home smelling like cologne that isn't mine. When you lie to my face about where you've been." My heart stopped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The restaurant that's been closed for 2 months. The work meetings that don't exist. The way you smile at your phone and hide the screen when I walk in the room." His voice was still controlled, but there was steel underneath now. "I'm not blind, Delith. I'm not stupid. I just chose to believe my wife wouldn't humiliate me in my own home." The room was spinning. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for an explanation, a denial, something. But all I could think about was Evan's hand in mine, his lips on mine, the way he made me feel alive. "You're paranoid," I said finally, but the words sounded weak even to me. "Am I?" Graham pulled out his phone and set it on the table. "Should I call the office right now and ask Sarah what time you left on Thursday? The Thursday you said you were working late but came home smelling like wine, and that cologne you bought me for Christmas, the one I never wear?" I felt trapped, cornered, like an animal in a cage. "You're making something out of nothing." "Then prove it," Mike said coldly. "Call this Evan right now and put it on speaker. Let's all hear how professional and appropriate your relationship is." "I don't have to prove anything to you," I snapped. "No," Marjorie said, standing up and taking Tessa's hand. "But you owe your husband and daughter better than this. Come on, sweetheart, let's go get some ice cream. After they left, the 4 remaining adults sat in terrible silence. My parents looked uncomfortable, unsure whose side to take. Graham was staring at his hands, and I felt a strange mix of guilt and defiance. I haven't done anything wrong, I said finally. Haven't you? Graham looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Disappointment so deep it looked like grief. Because right now, I feel like I don't know the woman I married at all. He stood up and began clearing the dishes, his movements careful and controlled. I'm sleeping in the guest room again tonight, and tomorrow, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about what we both want from this marriage. As he walked toward the kitchen, I heard him mutter something under his breath that made my blood run cold. 12 years. I gave you 12 years. The next morning, Graham was gone before I woke up. His coffee cup was washed and put away, his side of the bed made with hospital corners. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Taking Tessa to school. We'll be late tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. At work, I threw myself into Evan's arms, desperate for comfort, for validation, for someone to tell me I wasn't the villain in this story. He knows, I whispered against his chest. He knows about us. Hey, Evan said, stroking my hair. It's okay. Maybe this is good. Maybe now you can finally be honest about what you want. What I want? A divorce. Freedom. A chance to be with someone who actually appreciates you. The word divorce hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on the excitement of the affair, the thrill of feeling desired again, that I hadn't thought about the actual consequences. Divorce meant lawyers, custody battles, splitting assets. It meant Tessa shuttling between 2 homes, confused and hurt. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I said. Then what are you ready for? To go back to that passionless marriage? To pretend this never happened? Evan pulled back to look at me. Dalith, you can't have it both ways. Either you choose him or you choose me, but you can't keep choosing both. That afternoon I got a call from my mother. Your father and I have been talking about last night, she said without preamble. We're worried about you. I'm fine, Mom. Are you having an affair? The question was so direct, so unexpected that I almost dropped the phone. What? No, why would you? Because you're acting like I did when I had my little fling with the tennis instructor 20 years ago. The same defensiveness, the same way of turning everything around on your father. I'd forgotten about that. My parents had gone through a rough patch when I was in college, though they'd worked it out eventually. This is different, I said. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're sabotaging a good marriage because you're bored. And let me tell you something, sweetheart. The grass isn't always greener. I almost lost your father over a man who turned out to be nothing special. Don't make my mistakes. But I wasn't ready to hear that. Graham doesn't appreciate me. He takes me for granted. Graham works 2 jobs to pay for Tessa's private school. He does the grocery shopping because he knows you hate it. He's never once complained about your mother-in-law issues or your spending habits. Maybe the problem isn't that he doesn't appreciate you. Maybe it's that you don't appreciate him. After she hung up, I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Evan. Dinner tonight. I made reservations at that place you like. Before I could respond, another message came in, this one from Graham. Picked up Tessa. She's asking why you weren't at pickup. Told her you were working late. Again. The guilt hit me like a wave. I'd forgotten it was my day to get Tessa from school. I'd been so wrapped up in my drama with Evan that I'd completely forgotten my own daughter. I drove home in a haze of self-recrimination, practicing explanations in my head. But when I walked through the front door, I found Graham and Tessa in the living room, building a puzzle together. They looked up when I entered, and I saw the same expression on both their faces, polite disappointment. Sorry I'm late, I said. Work was crazy. It's okay, Mommy, Tessa said, but she didn't get up to hug me like she usually did. Daddy and I made grilled cheese for dinner. There's one in the fridge if you want it. That's sweet, baby. Let me just change clothes and… Actually, Graham interrupted, I need to run some errands. Tessa, want to come with me to Home Depot? Can we get ice cream after? Sure thing, kiddo. They left without asking if I wanted to come, without the usual family negotiation about who needed what from where. I was alone in the house, surrounded by the evidence of a life I was systematically destroying. Tessa's artwork on the refrigerator, Graham's reading glasses on the coffee table, family photos lining the mantel. My phone rang. Evan. Where are you? I'm at the restaurant. I can't make it, I said. Family stuff. Dilith, you can't keep doing this. Either you're committed to exploring what we have or you're not. I'm not going to be your backup plan while you figure out your marriage. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want the excitement of an affair without any of the actual commitment. That's not fair to either of us. After he hung up, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat in Graham's chair, trying to figure out how everything had gotten so complicated. An hour later, I heard the garage door open and the sound of Tessa's laughter echoing through the house. Daddy, you're so silly, she was saying. Ice cream isn't a vegetable. But it has milk in it, and milk comes from cows, and cows eat grass, so technically, that's not how it works. They came into the living room, both of them still giggling. When they saw me in Graham's chair with my wine, the laughter stopped. Mummy, are you sad? Tessa asked. No, baby, just tired. Daddy says you've been working really hard lately. Maybe you should take a vacation. Graham and I made eye contact over our daughter's head. Maybe I should, I said softly. Tessa, go get ready for your bath, Graham said. I'll be up in a minute to help with your hair. After she left, we sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Graham spoke. I saw a lawyer today. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Just a consultation. I wanted to understand my options. His voice was calm, matter of fact. I'm not filing for anything yet, but I needed to know where I stand. Graham, I also opened a separate bank account, just for me. I won't touch the joint accounts or affect your access to money, but I need to protect myself financially. I felt like I was watching my life crumble in slow motion. You're overreacting. Am I? Because this morning I found a charge on our credit card for a restaurant I've never been to, on a day you said you worked late. Last week there were flowers delivered to your office from someone who isn't me. And yesterday, you humiliated me in front of our families by basically announcing you're having an emotional affair. I never said. You didn't have to say it, Dilith. It's written all over your face every time you mention this Evan person. You light up when you talk about him in a way you haven't lit up for me in years. I wanted to deny it, to fight back, to make this his fault somehow, but the truth was sitting between us like a third person in the room. What do you want me to say? I asked finally. I want you to tell me the truth. Are you having an affair? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, deny everything, try to gaslight him into thinking he was imagining things, or I could tell the truth and face the consequences. Yes, I whispered. Graham closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they were completely calm. Thank you for being honest, he said. Now I know what I'm dealing with. He stood up and walked toward the stairs. I'll be staying at my mother's for a few days. I need time to think, and you need time to decide what you actually want. But Dilith, this limbo we're in, this half-life where you're married to me but emotionally invested in someone else, it ends now. One way or another. Graham, wait. I've spent 12 years being the safe choice, the reliable one, the man who never made waves. But I won't spend another day being the fool who pretends not to notice his wife is in love with someone else. He paused at the bottom of the stairs. I'll pick up Tessa for school tomorrow and drop her off after. You and I will talk this weekend when I've had time to process. But Dilith, whatever you decide it with your whole heart. I deserve that much. As I heard him packing upstairs, then saying goodnight to Tessa, I realized that for the first time in our marriage, Graham was the one making the decisions, and I had no idea what came next. Graham didn't come home that night, or the next. Tessa kept asking where Daddy was, and I found myself making excuses that sounded hollow, even to an 8-year-old. "He's helping Grandma Marjorie with some projects," I said over breakfast Wednesday morning. "But his clothes are gone from your closet," Tessa observed with the brutal honesty of childhood. "And he took his coffee maker." I hadn't noticed the coffee maker, that small detail, that he'd taken the time to pack his beloved espresso machine, hit me harder than all the legal threats in the world. Graham was serious about this separation. At work, Evan was waiting by my desk with coffee and a concerned expression. "You look terrible," he said, not unkindly. "Rough night?" "Graham moved out," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "He knows about us." "And how do you feel about that?" It was such a simple question, but I realized I didn't have a simple answer. Relief? Terror? Guilt? All of the above? "Confused," I said finally. "I thought this was what I wanted, but now that it's happening." "Second thoughts are normal," Evan said, sitting on the edge of my desk. "Big changes are scary, but think about how unhappy you were before. Think about how alive you feel when you're with me." He was right, of course. The past few months with him had been intoxicating, exciting in ways my marriage hadn't been in years. But there was something about the way he said it, so confident, so sure of my feelings, that rubbed me the wrong way. "It's not that simple," I said. "There's Tessa to consider, and the house, and—" "Details," he waved dismissively. "Those are just logistics. The important thing is that you're finally free to be yourself." But I didn't feel free. I felt like I was drowning. That afternoon, my phone rang. Marjorie. "I think we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Marjorie, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry, Delith. I'm disappointed. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street in an hour." She hung up before I could protest. Marjorie was already seated when I arrived, her silver hair perfectly styled, her expression unreadable. She'd ordered me a latte, my usual, which somehow made everything worse. "Graham told me about the affair," she said without preamble. "I don't know what he said, but he said you admitted it. He said you've been seeing someone from work for months." She stirred her tea with careful precision. "He also said you've been mocking him publicly, making him the butt of jokes about his lack of jealousy." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I wasn't mocking him, I was just—" "You were just what? Trying to get a reaction? Trying to hurt him enough that he'd finally fight back?" Marjorie set down her spoon and looked at me directly. "Well, congratulations. You got one." "This isn't all my fault," I said defensively. "Graham is emotionally unavailable. He never showed passion, never fought for me." "Never fought for you?" Marjorie's voice rose slightly. "He worked 60-hour weeks to pay off your student loans. He took a job he hated because it had better insurance for when you had complications with Tessa's birth. He learned to cook because you said takeout made you feel guilty. He coached soccer, even though he hates sports, because Tessa asked him to. What exactly did you need him to fight?" I opened my mouth to respond, but she continued. "You want to know why Graham never got jealous? Because he trusted you. Completely, utterly. It never occurred to him that his wife would betray that trust because he wouldn't betray yours. That's not emotional unavailability, Delith. That's love." "He never said he loved me," I protested weakly. "He said it every day. Every morning when he made your coffee exactly how you like it. Every time he picked up your dry cleaning without being asked. Every time he bit his tongue when you criticized him in front of other people because he didn't want to embarrass you by fighting back." I felt tears starting, but I pushed them down. "You don't understand. I felt invisible in my own marriage." "No," Marjorie said firmly. "You felt bored. And instead of working on your marriage, instead of talking to your husband about what you needed, you decided to find excitement somewhere else. And now you're trying to make it his fault." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Graham asked me to give you this." Inside were copies of bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, all the evidence of my affair laid out in neat, organized rows, lunch dates, flower deliveries, text messages, my double life documented in black and white. "He's not trying to hurt you," Marjorie said quietly. "He's protecting himself, because he finally understands that the woman he's been loving and trusting for 12 years doesn't exist anymore." That's not true, isn't it? The Delith I knew would never have humiliated her husband in public. She would never have lied to her daughter about where she was spending her time. She would never have thrown away a good marriage for a workplace flirtation. I stared at the papers, seeing my betrayal quantified in dollars and dates. What does he want? He wants you to decide, really decide. Either you end the affair, go to counseling, and fight for your marriage, or you let him go with dignity. But this middle ground, where you get to keep both men while he suffers in silence, that's over. And if I choose the affair? Marjorie's expression hardened. Then you'll discover that actions have consequences. Graham has been documenting everything. Your lies, your absences, your public humiliation of him. If this goes to court, you won't be painted as the victim. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the evidence of my choices. My phone buzzed with texts from Evan, asking about dinner plans, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. When I got home, Tessa was in the living room with a babysitter I didn't recognize, a teenager from down the street. "Where's Daddy?" Tessa asked immediately. "He's still at Grandma's house, sweetheart." "When is he coming home?" I knelt down beside her, looking into eyes that were exactly like Graham's. "I don't know, baby. Daddy and I are having some grown-up problems that we need to work out." "Are you getting divorced like Emma's parents?" The question hit me like a slap. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't want you to get divorced," Tessa said, tears starting to fall. "I want Daddy to come home." As I held my crying daughter, I realized that somewhere in my pursuit of excitement and passion, I'd forgotten about the people who would be hurt by my choices. Tessa didn't care if her father was emotionally demonstrative. She just wanted him home. That night, alone in my bed, I made a decision. I called Evan. "I can't see you anymore," I said when he answered. "What? Delith, what's wrong?" "Everything. This whole thing is wrong. I'm married, I have a daughter, and I'm destroying my family for what? A few months of excitement." "For love," he said firmly. "For a chance at real happiness. Don't let them guilt you into staying in a marriage that makes you miserable." "But does it make me miserable? Or am I just bored? Because there's a difference, and I think I've been confusing the two." "You're scared," Evan said. "Change is scary. But you can't go backward, Delith. You can't pretend this never happened." He was right about that. I couldn't go backward, but maybe if I was very lucky, I could go forward in a different direction than the one I'd been heading. "I have to try to fix my marriage," I said. "I owe Graham that much. I owe Tessa that much. And what about what you owe yourself?" "Maybe what I owe myself is the chance to be the person I used to be. The person who would never have done this in the first place." After I hung up, I called Graham. It went straight to voicemail. "It's me," I said to the recording. "I ended it. The affair, I mean. It's over. I know that doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. Call me when you're ready to talk. Please." I hung up and waited for him to call back. He didn't. 3 days passed without a word from Graham. He picked up Tessa for school and activities, but he communicated only through our daughter or brief, polite text messages about logistics. When I tried calling, he didn't answer. When I went to Marjorie's house, no one came to the door. On Saturday morning, a man in a suit knocked on my door. "Process server." "Delith Mora?" "Yes?" "You've been served." The papers were thick, official, terrifying. Petition for legal separation, temporary custody arrangement, asset division requests. Graham wasn't just threatening anymore, he was taking action. I called him immediately, but again, voicemail. "Graham, please, we need to talk about this. Don't do this through lawyers. Call me. An hour later, my phone rang. Not Graham, Mike. You need to stop calling my brother, he said without preamble. Mike, please. I know I screwed up, but… Screwed up? Delith, you had an affair. You humiliated him in public repeatedly. You lied to his face for months. That's not screwing up. That's betrayal. I ended it. The affair is over. Good. That's the bare minimum of what you should have done. But it doesn't undo the damage. So what? That's it. 12 years of marriage thrown away. You threw it away the first time you had lunch with another man and didn't tell your husband about it. Graham's just finally accepting reality. I want to fight for my marriage. Mike was quiet for a long moment. Then you should have thought about that before you gave up the right to fight. What does that mean? It means Graham's done being your safety net. He's done being the reliable guy you can take for granted while you explore your options. You made your choice, Delith. Now you get to live with the consequences. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, desperate for support, for someone to tell me I could fix this. I don't know what to do, I told them, showing them the legal papers. He won't talk to me. He's filed for separation. I think I'm going to lose everything. My father read through the documents carefully, while my mother poured coffee with shaking hands. This is very thorough, Dad said finally. He's documented everything, the affair, the financial impact, even instances of what he calls public humiliation and emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? That's ridiculous. I never abused anyone. Didn't you? Mom asked quietly. Honey, I've been thinking about what you said at that dinner, how you talked about Graham in front of his family. If someone talked about me that way in public, I'd be devastated. I was just joking. No, Dad interrupted. You were being cruel, and according to this, you did it repeatedly, in front of people who love and respect him. That's not joking, sweetheart. That's humiliation. I felt like everyone was ganging up on me, like I was the villain in a story where I'd started out as the victim. So what am I supposed to do? Just give up? You're supposed to take responsibility, Mum said firmly. You're supposed to stop making excuses and start making amends. If you want your marriage back, you need to prove you deserve it. How? Start with the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more minimizing, no more blaming Graham for your choices. Then you grovel. Hard. And maybe, if you're very lucky, he'll give you a chance to earn his trust back. But when I tried to call Graham again, I got a different message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He'd changed his number. The legal papers kept coming. Custody evaluations, financial disclosures, a restraining order that meant I could only contact Graham through lawyers or for Tessa's emergencies. My attorney, Patricia Chen, didn't sugarcoat it. With proof of my affair, money lies, and public humiliation, Graham was the stable parent now. I was the disruption. In mediation, he calmly laid it all out. The missed pickups, the school events he attended alone, the lies I fed our 8-year-old so I could see Evan. When the mediator asked if I disputed anything, I finally stopped trying to spin and just said no. I said I'd ended the affair, that I wanted counseling, that I wanted to fix things. Graham didn't even raise his voice. He just said the marriage was over and that some couples recover from affairs, but not the kind where one partner spends months lying and mocking the other in public. In the end, he got primary custody, the house, and half our assets. I got weekends, child support payments, and the realization that I'd burned down my own life. When I told him it hadn't worked with Evan, that it was never real like what we had, he only said, "What we had was real. That's what makes this so tragic. You traded it for a fantasy." 6 months later, I live in a small apartment and see Tessa every other weekend and one weeknight. Graham recently married Sarah, a kind teacher from Tessa's school, and my daughter was their flower girl. Evan moved to California and wanted me to follow. I finally had enough clarity to say no. Now I'm in therapy, untangling how I became the kind of person who destroys her own family out of boredom. The hardest truth is simple. I had a good man, a loving daughter, and a stable home, and I convinced myself it wasn't enough. Graham never got jealous because he trusted me completely. I mocked him for that. I should have cherished it instead.